go into the All-Star break. You really have to try to push as much as you can and to end on a note that is, going to give you a little bit of an advantage, and especially getting ready. You've been doing so well in some of these road games. I just think that it honestly, it looked optically, it looked bad. It looked really bad.
Yeah, and it was one of those games where you could pick any number of things that were the cause of the Hawks losing. And that was also the frustrating thing. Defense obviously was the top, because at the end of the day, really was lack thereof. Like, did the defense show up at all? But I think you make a great point too about the fact that these are the types of games that are very winnable, and the Hawks should win, because the Indiana Pacers, they look like a team that's minus Tyrese Halliburton. They'd only won 13 games, right? And the Hawks found themselves to start the night in the 9th position. But check this out. When you look at the Eastern Conference, there's really not the space that you see over in the West, right? So Detroit is up 35-12, but New York is like right there, and Boston, they're both just 5.5 games behind the Pistons. Raptors and Cavs just 7.5 games behind the Pistons. And then Philadelphia, 9 games behind. The reason I say that is because you make a great point about these Eastern Conference games and just how important it is to win every one of them, because with these teams bunched up at the top, it could be the difference in you being the 7th seed versus the 10th seed in the play-in. So this is one of those where you hope it doesn't come back to bite the Hawks in the butt, but you can't be sure, because again, it was one of those games where I agree with you. You absolutely had to win. And also, when you have Jalen Johnson back and when you have Zaccharie Risacher back, you would think that would be reason enough for you to get it done. And I just feel like my take was Jalen Johnson's triple-double was wasted. He gets his 8th triple-double of the season. And normally you're thinking, okay, if Jalen Johnson got a triple-double and he did what he was supposed to do, then the team should follow. And so there he is, 33 points in just 36 minutes, 12 of 29 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3, and 12 rebounds to go along with 10 assists and 3 steals, right? So you're thinking, okay, that's the kind of game you want to see Jalen Johnson play. We have talked about the challenges in the Hawks front court. Well, the front court did his job. The main in the front court. You could only expect so much from Zaccharie Risacher coming back from an 11-game absence, right? So 7 points, 3 rebounds. I don't have a problem with that. And a steal, probably getting his legs under him again, right? Mo Gay, you got to give Mo, because 4 rebounds, not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. Like, Jalen Johnson needs more help. He needs more help. And yes, it needs to be a team effort, but at a minimum, I need the front court overall to be a walking double-double at a minimum.
And you know what? I can see that in a lot of cases, Tenitra. I give a little bit of I give a little bit of grace, just because of the unusually good scoring night that Muhammad Gay had, and especially without this team. Of course, not having Kristaps Porzingis, but also not having Onyeka Okongwu. That's just a tall task for anybody. I mean, we are working with Christian Koloko, for crying out loud.
Yes.
But I also do think that where you do have a point is that this was also an Indiana team that, doesn't have like the starting center in Turner the way that it once did. Yeah. They also went out there starting a bunch of guards, essentially, like Pascal Siakam is essentially kind of like their starting center almost in this situation. So no excuses, and that is where the Hawks do need to dominate, because technically they are the bigger team in terms of size. And when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, even in the front court, in the back court, I respect the fact that what they were able to do in terms of the scoring in the paint, that's ultimately what I think kept them in this game, because if for darn sure wasn't their defense.
Yeah. The Hawks did outscore the Pacers 64-56 in the paint, but I hear you. It's nice to give grace. I'm not giving it, because those offensive rebounds, those second chance opportunities were so critical. I mean, that's 16 points that essentially, if your front court had done a better job in tandem, then it could have been a different game. But again, there are more than enough places for us to point to. Yes, but like I said, I hate this. I'm disappointed because Jalen Johnson had a stellar night really across the entirety of the box score, and you really kind of squandered that. And not a bad night from Nickeil Alexander-Walker either, and even CJ McCollum. So going to the bench too, by the way, I wanted to say this real quick. The Hawks squandered another good night from the bench. And that disappoints me as well because Corey Kispert had 11. Like I said, CJ 18, Luke Kennard 11. Those are the types of games where if the bench gives you that much in a 9-person rotation that Quinn Snyder went with tonight, I'm sorry, that should just equal a dub. But like I said, nevertheless, at the end of the day, we'll talk about the fact that that wasn't the only challenge. There were a number of other things that we saw kind of play out in that second half that were the turning point for this team. We'll talk about it up next. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard, one, for the max discount to win. Add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. So Prize Picks is super simple to use. It takes no time to get started. The whole format is clean. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and it makes watching games even more fun because every drive and every stat matters. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, well, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Pull up the Game Time app. You can pick an upcoming NBA game, and you'll have tickets locked in within minutes. You'll love seeing the all-in price up front, no surprise fees at checkout, and being able to see the view from the seat before buying made the decision and will make the decision easy for you. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download that Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co. gametime.co, not .com, but gametime.co. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candies, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off yourself. It's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship. Most people are working through something, and therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. It can also help you communicate better, set healthier boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. So BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the US, and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do that at any time. So sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BETTERHELP.com/lockedonnba. Well, DeShaun, we can go a number of areas. We can go a number of ways as far as what was the turning point in this game tonight. But one of the more critical ones that you and I kind of pointed out for starters was how the Hawks shot nearly 55% in the first half, but the shots just weren't falling in the second half. They only shot about 38%. And we'll talk about a couple of other areas where really, I think when it comes down to it, especially when the other team is having a great night shooting in both halves, that's going to be your turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Yeah, it's one of those nights where, and granted, the Pacers are a team that has always been able to score, right? So not shocking necessarily that they scored at the clip they did. And the points don't actually tell the story, because obviously the second quarter was where the Pacers really did it, outscoring the Hawks 45-34. And the Hawks, quote unquote, won the third quarter, outscoring them 27-23. But ultimately, when you kind of dig deeper in, the chasm between what the Hawks did in that first half and what they did in that second half was just a little too hard to overcome.
It wasn't good, Tenitra, and I don't know exactly what happened or like what made it so different. It's not like Indiana was playing this ridiculous,
lights out deep,
crazy defense or anything like that. A little bit discouraging, probably because due to the shooters that we have and rely upon so much, and we have so many of them. That's why it's hard to give grace in that particular department. Like, yes, I gave a little bit of grace to Muhammad Gay, because as he finished with 15, he had 11 of those 15 in the first half.
Yeah.
Where was that when you really needed it in the second half? And not even just about him, because I know that if there's someone who I don't really rely on as much to make a three-pointer, it's probably him. Sure. I don't think we can have those same conversations about the 2Ks being Kispert and Kennard, who both had 9 points at the half, and both of them scored 2 points in the second half. Had 9 and finished with 11. So in some cases, it wasn't even shots that they were taking at all that I think that they should have been taken, that could have helped them, kind of get back into this game against a team that they didn't really have any business trying to get back in the lead against, in my opinion. But I think the other thing to that probably is, CJ McCollum, while he is still getting used to some things, still, trying to develop and establish chemistry amongst the guys and everything else. It's very rare that we see him not get into double digits of scoring figures until like late in the third quarter or something like that. So he didn't particularly have a fantastic game, but of course started getting it together a little bit later on. There's just too many instances where it's the Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jalen Johnson show, if I'm just being honest. Way too many games that are like that. And I think that reflects during times when you see that Jalen Johnson is not on the floor, which is hardly ever. But yes, CJ McCollum gives contributes, but they're going to really need someone else. Obviously, you didn't have Onyeka Okongwu. So some things I'm kind of willing to excuse. But I just think that there's some times when, yes, Dyson Daniels gives you the defense that he gives you, and he's improved on his offense over the course of the last month, but he still just needs to be able to give a little bit more for this team and still continue to get downhill and keep defenses honest.
Yeah, as a starter, definitely have to give more. And like you said, in that third quarter, there was an opportunity there for the Hawks. And unfortunately, the three ball just wasn't falling. I mean, they shot 30% from three in that third quarter, and that was significant. And then under 29% in the fourth quarter. So you look at that as an opportunity that maybe the Hawks could have won the game. But another area where they just did not do well tonight was from the free throw line. They had more opportunities to get to the charity stripe than Indiana did. Indiana had 21 shots, 21 free throws to the Hawks 28. But the Pacers shot almost 86% from the free throw line. Hawks only shot 75%. So again, when you look at a game that only has a 5-point difference after you saw what happened in that second quarter where they were outscored 45-34, you start looking and deep diving to see. It's just like you were saying with the turnover at the end. Great opportunity for the Hawks, missed opportunity for the Hawks.
It was. And again, we always talk about those free throws. And I get it. It's so much easier for us to say sitting on the lazy boy and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I get it. Free throws sometimes are difficult because you're not in rhythm. It's not a rhythm shot. You're out there on the island all by yourself. sometimes that's just a little bit more difficulty, but you're paid professionals to do this, and for a free throw, there ain't no excuse for it.
Like at all.
Yeah.
Because we talk about that in football, DeShaun, where there are three phases of the game. And most of the time when you win a game, it's because the offense, the defense, and special teams showed up.
That's right.
So you could kind of make an analogy in basketball as well. Let me see your field goal percentage, what's your 3-point percentage, and what's your free throw. Those are your three phases offensively where you have to get it done. And unfortunately, from the field, not a good look. From three, definitely not a good look. And like you said, just some missed opportunities at that free throw line that unfortunately kind of cost them, because again, we're looking at a team that only lost by 5. Now you've got to get on the road and reset yourself for one of those pesky teams in the Miami Heat. It's always contentious between the Heat and the Hawks. So when I think about them having to reset, what is the reset button for them Monday? And again, Onyeka Okongwu is not expected to be ready to go for that next game. I think they said Tuesday was the earliest where they'll kind of evaluate to see where he is. So obviously going to Miami to take on one of your nemesis, it's like, okay. And actually, I'm sorry, that game's Tuesday night, not Monday night, by the way. So he may be back, but it's not likely. Tuesday very early. So they've got to think about how they want to play this game without one of their bigs.
And not only that, Tenitra, but I'm not anticipating that he's going to necessarily come back after missing X amount of games and be the same Onyeka Okongwu right off the rip either. Yeah. So this is where I think that the team is going to have to adjust this game with some pride, knowing that they're traveling on the road to Miami, I believe you said. And while, Atlanta definitely plays pretty good while they're on the road, Miami is just one of those Heat culture, come with the defense. They've been a thorn in the Atlanta Hawks side, especially on the defensive end. Atlanta has to be able to step up its defense as well. We know that they can put the ball in the hole. They have the shooters and everything else to do so. Yeah. They have to be able to show that they can match the defensive intensity by Miami if they want to have a chance at winning this game.
Yeah, because the last game was all Miami, 126-111. So Miami really, like you said, defensively, you always expect them to show up. That's why they're able to hold the Hawks to just 111 when they played back on December 29th. But the Heat actually had a good shooting night as well, which is why they were able to score 126 points. So yeah, you got to be in position and you have to make sure that, hey, if you don't have Onyeka Okongwu, you got to figure it out. And that'll be Zaccharie Risacher's second game back, right? So you're hoping that you're going to be able to get a little bit more out of him. And, when I'm looking back at that Miami game from late December, that was one of those where Jalen Johnson did his part for the front court. He was one rebound short of a triple-double. Onyeka Okongwu, a 12-8 night, but certainly you'll kind of miss some of that. Zaccharie Risacher did not have a good night. He needs to have a better night against them. And of course, they're going to need their bench play to step it up as well, because Miami plays 0 games.
Yeah, that's a totally different level. I'll be interested to see the way that this team kind of shows up, the kind of mentality that they have, the way that they're going to play. Atlanta's usually pretty good with having, some balance. Yeah. But, Miami is also a team that when they get going and they get under your skin, they really come with it, and they got the dogs to do so, and they put their foot on the gas and they don't move it. So, I'll be really interested to see if Atlanta can start, utilizing drawing up some different schemes that doesn't feel like it's just relying on Jalen Johnson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker all the time.
Yeah. And hopefully before these last 2 losses, obviously the Hawks were on a 4-game win streak. So maybe, just maybe, they'll head down to South Beach and they will start another win streak. We shall see Tuesday night. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. Stay safe in the crazy streets that we are dealing with this weather event, and we'll see you next time.